Hi guys, my name is Lawrence Baker. I'm an Adobe certified expert in Photoshop CC and Photoshop Lightroom. This video is about importing into Lightroom. I'm using Lightroom CC, but this will be relevant to anyone using Lightroom 4 and above. I'm not going to cover watch folders. I'm not going to cover importing from a tethered camera. I'm not going to cover importing from another catalogue. This is purely about the import dialog box. Let's get cracking. I'm going to go to the preferences first, and I'm using keyboard shortcuts because this video will go on for a very long time if I don't. Right, under file handling, and this is about creating DNGs on the fly as you import them. So if you have a Canon or a Nikon that shoots in a proprietary RAW format other than DNG, so any format, RAW format other than DNG, it will convert them on the fly. DNG is Adobe's way of rationalizing the RAW market. There's too many formats out there. Adobe have created DNG, it's open source, anyone can use it, so some camera manufacturers have taken it up, Leica in particular, and there's a few others. If you need to convert, you have a choice between DNG capitals or DNG lowercase. Compatibility, this is about what version of Adobe Camera Raw you want to create on the fly with this DNG. And I would say if you're using the latest versions of Photoshop, stick with the latest version. If you've got an older version of Photoshop, find out what version that's using of Adobe Camera Raw and convert them to that version. You can always reconvert them later to a higher version of Adobe Camera Raw. JPEG preview, medium size. What this means is in the library module, initially, you'll see your JPEG previews of the converted DNG files in a medium size. And it's handy because it embeds it in the DNG file. If you go outside of programs other than Adobe, that preview will be there with the raw file, the raw DNG file. So don't fret too much about it, because if you start playing around in Lightroom, i.e. you start to develop that photograph, that JPEG preview will not come into play because you'll be looking at that photograph in ProPhoto RGB color space. So it's not an issue. I would leave it at medium size and that will fill up your screen, I can assure you. Embed fast load data. That means it puts a small overhead on your converted DNG file that makes it load faster in Lightroom when you go to develop it. So I would keep that ticked because it hardly adds much at all to the image. Embed original RAW file. This will add a hell of a lot to your image. Now you might have a very good reason for this. You might have a client or a person you're working with who would like the original RAW file as well as the DNG. So tick it if you have to, but don't tick it otherwise. Right, general import options. Show import dialog when a memory card is detected. That means if you're already in Lightroom and you're in the library module or the develop module or wherever, you put a memory card into your SD card reader or on the side of your Mac, as I'm doing, it will load up the import dialog. It's simple as that. It just saves you a little bit of time, but really it's not that important if it's ticked or unticked. Select the current previous import collection during import. And all that does is, when you import and you go back into the library, the first thing you'll see is your previous import. If you don't have it ticked, it will show you in the library the images you were previously viewing before the import. I always keep it ticked, it's on by default, because if you do an import, you want to have a look at the photographs. You're doing it for a reason, to work with them. Ignore camera generated folder names when naming folders. Unticked or ticked, I have never seen this make any difference. I've even spoken to Adobe experts who work for Adobe who are not 100% sure of what it does. So having that ticked or unticked makes not the slightest bit of difference. I keep it ticked. Treat JPEG files next to RAW files as separate photos. Now, my camera imports both the JPEG and a DNG file. I have no choice. I can only import like that. So I don't want to see the JPEG files as well as the DNG files in the catalogue. And I got it wrong the first time I started using Lightroom. So find out how your camera outputs stuff. And if it does output JPEGs at the same time and you can't just import the RAW files, don't tick this because you'll end up with both the JPEG and a RAW file. So keep it unticked. Right, I'm going to go to import now. I'm using keyboard shortcuts because I have to be quick. You can go to the file menu, but I'm going Command Shift I to get the import dialog up. In fact, I'm going to waste a little bit of time. I'm going to put an SD card in the side of my Mac now. Let's see if it works. Now it's clunking away, and I could have gone quite quickly to the import dialog. Well, it's worked. That shows you. And it's loaded up what's on my, or what was on my camera inside the SD card. It works from left to right. There's my Leica. It's going over to Untitled. In fact, I want it on my book. And I would say when you first start using Lightroom, pay great attention to the right hand side and find your way of working right from the go-get, because if you don't, you'll end up having a mess. Right, from the left hand side, my SD card, I have 4 options. Copy as DNG. Now that's for people who are shooting in a proprietary RAW format other than DNG. You can import as a DNG, and copy means exactly as it says. It leaves everything on the original SD card or wherever you're importing from and just copies it, brings it into the catalogue and copies it to the destination you decide. You're adding to the catalogue and you're also copying the whole raw file somewhere else. You not only bring it into Lightroom, you're moving it somewhere, either on an external hard drive or to your hard drive or whatever, anything connected to your computer. That's copy as DNG. Copy is the only option I normally have if I'm copying from an SD card, because it's not like a hard drive. It doesn't work the same way as a hard drive, so you can only copy stuff over, i.e. you can't move this stuff off and delete it from the SD card. Notice with the SD card there, I cannot access, move or add. In fact, I can use copy as DNG, but these are DNG files anyway, so why would I do that? There you go, I can copy only from an SD card. Move is as it sounds. I'm going to move it. In fact, I'm going to go to something else on my system that I can show you. Users, my name. Sorry about the delay here, guys. I have to move around like this, obviously. Buffer, there you go. And it should load up in a minute. Now, I can move stuff from its original location here. This is on my hard drive. Move it to somewhere else on my hard drive or anything connected to my computer. And move means exactly that. It will take it completely from where it was in this buffer folder here, move it into the catalogue, and also move it somewhere else on my PC or Mac. But for moving stuff around on your computer, it's a very good way of doing things. Move it to where you want it to move it, and add it to the catalogue at the same time. Add photos to catalogue without moving them, because if you see underneath, it's telling you move photos to a new location, add to the catalogue. And then copy photos to a new location, add to the catalogue. Copy as DNG, copy to a new location, import and convert to DNG. It's written below in very light grey, so take notice of that. So add will do exactly as it says. It will add stuff from this buffer folder into the catalogue without moving it from its original location. I'm going to go and show you the stuff underneath here first. All photos and new photos. Now, if you didn't format your SD card and I put it in, and if I go back to the Leica disc, if I did imported one of these pictures, I might end up duplicating things. Now, if I have it on all photos, it will just bring all photos in. If I have it on new photos, it will try its best to recognise that I've got previous photos I've imported. This feature gets duplicated over on the right here in a minute. I'll show it to you in a minute. Now, destination photos will only really show up when I've got it set to organise by date. Now, it's a bit of a confusing thing, this destination folders. All it will show you is, if I'm importing by date, for instance, it will show you where these folders or where these pictures are going to end up. And it's telling me on my my external disk, and I've got a Dropbox folder, it's going to end up in 2015, May 26. That's when the capture time was. It's just telling me where it's going to put them. And I'm going to go back to copy as well here. So it's just telling me where they're going to end up. If the capture time on the camera is right, it will end up whatever time date you captured it. So that's all destination folders is. It's just giving you a different view, really. The important bit is the right hand side. It's very important. Most of us will put either a camera into the side of the computer, and by the way, that will treat the SD card inside the camera as it does treat the SD card you're putting in the side of your computer or into a reader. It will treat it as an SD card, so you can only copy. You'll never be able to wipe your SD card from Lightroom. Let's go back to new photos. The right hand side is the important side. It's saying I want to bring them in to my book. Now I have other choices here, a little drop down menu. I can pick different parts, but once different paces I should say on my computer. So you can change things here, but I would prefer you did it from, let's say, your HD drive or your drive on your Windows machine. That's where it's going to. Now build previews are not worth worrying about. All it's saying, as you import them here, you'll see previews on the screen of them being imported, and if you have anything other than minimal, it's going to slow down the import because it has to render it on the screen. So embedded in Sidecar means the JPEG file, it'll be using the JPEG file that's with your RAW file to create a very large preview. Standard means it's going to bring them in as standard files, but it's going to convert them to Adobe 1998 RGB color space. Try and remember that. You don't really need that either, because you're not going to do any editing here, you're just importing, so it's giving you a choice that you don't really need. One to one, you will see full-size previews, the full size of that picture. You don't need that either. So for the sake of expediency, I would leave it on minimal. Now, build smart previews. There's something new to Lightroom, just come out in a previous version, and what it does is it allows you to have something called a Lossy DNG. And what that means is, if you are a person that had an external hard drive and a laptop, let's say, for example, you imported these as smart previews, or you had smart previews on your Lightroom catalogue, once you unplug that hard drive, let's say, and go on an aeroplane, you can still edit inside the develop module with the smart previews. They're much, much smaller than the original files. The reason it's called lossy is it's throwing away data like a JPEG does. It's saying, well, I don't need all that data to show it to you on screen. To do an edit, develop edit, you don't need all that data. So that's what smart previews are. If you're the type of photographer that definitely works away from your normal desktop and you've got a laptop and you move around, it might be worthwhile ticking it here. Or you can create them in the library module. So it's entirely up to you. Don't import suspected duplicates. Well, that's like that new photos thing here. If you've already imported something and you've not changed the file name at all, and the EXIF data in the file hasn't changed, and it's the same size, Lightroom will grey these ones out. So if I'd previously imported some of these, they'd be greyed out if I hadn't changed the file name. Because what Lightroom is doing is looking at the original file name, then looking at the size of the file and looking at the EXIF data. The EXIF data is stuff like capture time. So if all these things haven't changed, Lightroom won't import, it'll grey it out, and you'll see it in that view. It'll say, I've already got these, I don't need them. So what I do when I do an import from an SD card, I get the import in, I don't back it up because I have my own backup strategies outside of Lightroom, but it goes onto my little external drive there, called My Book, and what I do then is when I put that card back in the camera, I format it. I know you're losing a certain form of backup, and I format it via the camera. Make a second copy to, that allows you to make a second copy to where you decide. I don't use it very often. Add to collection. Now, collections, I don't want to cover this in any detail, but collections are virtual folders, so to speak, inside Lightroom. They're folders you create. They're not folders physically on the drive or anything like that. They're virtual folders. I very rarely use it. File renaming. You might be a professional photographer and there might be a good reason why you rename your files. Now, I point out that the camera obviously creates sequential file names. Now, there will be a point when it will go back to 0. I can't remember where it is on a Leica. It might be 300,000 shots. I have no idea. But I like having the camera number and name things for me because it's consistent, and that's what I'm trying to get at. If you're going to rename your files, do it from the go-get and be consistent. You could use one of the templates here, and that shoot name original file number. Now you could put the shoot name in here, let's say Bermuda or something. I should be so lucky. And you can see it's going to create a sample. It's not actually what it's going to create. Bermuda -001 raw, but it will use that L number there as a matter of fact, because it's the original, you can see it's the original file number. So it's not exactly what you're going to see, it's a sample. Shoot name sequence, it's going to start from number 1. You can start it for any number you like and put a shoot name in. Now professional photographers will do this. It's kind of a deceptive way of doing things. But for me as an amateur photographer with one machine, I let the camera do the numbering. Because I've done it where I've changed the file names and then I've changed them again and I've played around with things and it's not done me any good whatsoever. So I would say stick with the original file name. Simple as that. Then you won't have any problems. So I never have this ticked. Extensions, you can even change the extensions. It gets, believe me guys, you can do a hell of a lot with this renaming of files. I don't want to go into it now, but when I go edit, you'll see I can bring in dimensions into the name of the file, the exposure into the name of the file. And I've played around with it because I wanted to experiment, and I've regretted it. Unless you've got a very good reason, don't rename your files. My tip. Apply during import. Now you can apply develop settings. I used to things like general presets like auto tone. You can have your own Lightroom presets. You can go ahead and use whatever presets you like. I personally say don't use it because you want to see your file as it's come out of the camera, and you make the decisions about how you're going to tone it up, how you're going to colour it, etc. I have got metadata preset stuck in here called normal copyright no date. Now I can edit presets from here, and when it comes up, that is how much metadata you can put into your image automatically. And as you can see, that's a custom one. I can start filling it in now and save it as a preset. Disconcertingly, Lightroom likes to use this drop down method instead of going to the menus to save stuff. So if I liked what I've done and put information, I could so save current settings as a new preset. And that would be a new preset. I've already got one called normal copyright no date, which has got most of my information in it, even including my address. So that's down to me. That's what I want to put in. That's what you can do. This is really most of it about IPTC, and it stands for International Press Telecommunications Council. And newspapers have a very good reason for using this method because they need to draw up pictures really quickly. When I say draw them up, get them from a system based on metadata stored in there. And you could go on with all sorts of extensions, etc. And it is quite serious for people who operate in large newspapers. They have people employed just to pull up images, but can handle a huge database like they have in newspapers. As I say, I can add keywords in, and keywords are pretty obvious, but I would only do it if every photograph fitted that keyword. I wouldn't do it otherwise, because you can end up putting keywords and stuff you don't need to keyword. But if they are all of the same subject, or they had a common subject or common keyword, put it in here. Destination. Right, this is the big one. Mine goes into external file by date format. It suits me, and the date format I've got is the one there by default, 2015 May 28. It's opposite to the way the Europeans do things, or especially the English I should say. The Americans do it the other way around, and I prefer it because actually it's more logical and it sort of catalogues your photos better. Always check this right hand side before you import. Please, please, please check the right hand side, because sometimes you might have done something, it's changed stuff, and then you want to go back to your normal import and it's not there. Now the way you could save stuff is down the bottom here. Like that normal import was my preset. So everything you set up here can be saved as a preset, an import preset. It's very important to remember. So once you've got things how you like them, I can go save current settings as a new preset. Once you've got things how you want them, save it. I can go update my preset normal import. I don't want to. I say it remembers your last import, what you did before. So it usually, if you've got a set way of working, a workflow, it should be fine. Sort by file name. Well, if you want to sort stuff by capture time or file name, it only means in here. It doesn't mean anywhere else. Uncheck all. You won't import anything. You can untick stuff you don't want to import. You can see stuff in loop view. So it's probably going to show up one of these here. It's going to load it. Yeah, there you go. By the way, I'll give you a quick heads up. Loop is this. Do you see what jewelers use? Little thing they put over their eye. And that's what a loop is. Hence loop view. It magnifies twice the size, my loop. So I use it for certain things. So my eyesight isn't brilliant. So that's what a loop is, guys. So don't be confused by that name anymore. I think I've covered everything here. There's a lot to this. I could have gone even more depth, but I think stuff like presets, metadata presets and import presets need to be covered separately. But I've gone over all of it. I can't think of anything else. I can I can show fewer options, and that's all that will do is shrink it right down to this. And there you go. I've got my normal import. I know it's going to work. I could have just this. It's got a keyword box. I can put some keyword stuff in there. I can't use the actual develop presets, but I might have one set up under my import here. So there you go. That might be quite useful. That, guys, is it. I hope you've got something from this. And the only other little thing I probably haven't showed you is you can muck about the magnification. Adobe always gives you a lot of bells and whistles. It gives you more choices than you need. And I think I've covered them all. Thanks, guys.